A very watery February leading into March, if you will. Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Michelle. Today I'm starting The Tempest, continuing right along on my journey following the Odyssey. I'm thinking the next logical step is to reread To the Lighthouse, and I think that will also tie back in to some of the Montgomery stuff that I was reading. So stay tuned there. Mentioned in my last vlog, I started The Tempest this morning. This is the Oxford World Classics edition. This is the 2008 reissue. Like I said, there's a new copy with a new cover. I'm wondering if there's updates to the introduction. If there is, I might have to check that out. This is the edition that I picked up for my comparative literature course. This was the first, it wasn't an English class per se, it was classified in the comp lit department instead of the English department. But this is the first Englishy class that I took in college. It ended up when I was registering, I went to orientation a little bit late, and I think they staggered some of the openings, but basically first come, first serve for registration, and it was a madhouse. So anyway, all the first year writing and intro Englishes were full. Maybe not intro English, but I felt like I had to take the first year writing course first, which was not really the case. I ended up taking them simultaneously, and they were different enough. It was fine. The first year writing is a general credit that everyone in the liberal arts college took. This comp lit class at the recommendation of my advisor, and it ended up being so great. It was one of my favorite classes, and I think about it quite often. This is the Norton Shakespeare, I believe. Yes, this is the second edition, and there are multiple different versions you can get. You can get these all in one big book, actually. Then you can also get them as 4, so that one's divided into history plays, tragedies, comedies, and then Roman plays, maybe. I can't quite remember. This edition divides it, volume 1, early plays and works. As you can see, these are the ones we covered in that class. As you can also see, I got this used, and there was a sticker on the back, or the back, someone had removed a sticker and it was sticky, and I can't stand that. So I just put some sticky notes over it so it wasn't sticking to everything in my backpack. And this is that second volume, and these are the ones we read in here. I imagine the blue is The Tempest. If I had to guess, I did read this play. Yep, here it is. I did read this play twice in college. I didn't end up reading this intro. I'd never read the other intro before. Maybe I will. It's quite short. Maybe I will go ahead and do that before I end up getting into the text of the play. It ended up, I can't remember, something about the class. I think we ended up with the 3rd edition instead of the 2nd, or maybe the professor was using the 1st edition, or maybe he had everything together. Somehow the pages didn't line up perfectly, and I specifically bought the edition that was required for the course, and I was frustrated the whole time. And if I would have known they weren't going to line up anyway, I probably would have done the 4 edition one, just so I wasn't lugging around these guys. It's a real backbreaker. The real problem is, as you can see, they are stubbier and thicker than a normal book. So when you put them in your backpack, especially with notebooks and other books, the weight distribution will not be great. So I ended up just carrying these around my second year of college all the time. I don't think that I super have a preference. I went for this one just because I'm taking it into work with me and reading it on my lunch break, and this a lot easier to carry around than this guy, but I might flip back and forth since I have both. I do like the Norton has everything all together. If I had every single Shakespeare play by itself, this would take up forever on my bookshelf. I also don't know if Oxford has an Oxford edition of every single play. They might not. This from 2008 has a list. Maybe it's just recommended, but this seems to suggest that it's maybe not every single play. I don't really know who the intro in this one is by. Honestly, I couldn't find too much information on it. I was trying to figure out what year this was published, and I would have liked some more background and detail on the introduction. Maybe I'll find it somewhere else in the little book. When I first read this book in that complet course, I was primarily interested in Caliban. That's what I ended up writing my essay on. Caliban, colonization, empire, that sort of thing. I think primarily this read, I am interested in memory and storytelling and the past. A little bit of that has come up in the intro already. It's talked about how this is very much related to Virgil's Aeneid, which I do not believe that I've ever read. We did discuss it a lot in that complet class, and that was my professor's specialty. I liked the line in the intro. It's talking about the way that the play is told, and it's told as a memory and a recollection of the past. I found that really interesting, especially just coming off of the Odyssey in terms of structure, how the Odyssey is structured, how that one is told, the oral tradition, the way that it's not starting in the present moment and a lot of it is being recounted through the lens of the past. I found that really interesting. This intro was also really good because it gave me a lot of history. Roman history is very prevalent in the Tempest, but also English history and the way the monarchy and kings and queens and succession factored into that. And I don't think I was aware of a lot of that before going in. I'm excited to get into this one and continue my journey. What do we think of the new background? My husband and I decided to move the shelves over from the wall right where you walk into the door to the wall behind the couch. I think I really like it, and the whole room feels like it just opened up. I feel like I have a great background for videos, finally. I'm really excited, and I unhauled a couple of books. I feel like I found some new space on the shelves, and everything just feels organized and clean. That was quite the endeavor, so I have not read any more of The Tempest or anything else, but hoping to do so this afternoon. It's not quite sit outside and read weather yet, but I'm so ready for it. I finished The Tempest this morning. This was my third reread of The Tempest, so I did already know that I liked this one. Going in this time, I was hoping it would fit in with the Odyssey and themes of home, the ocean, of course. There was quite a bit of humanity in this, human goodness and mortality. I knew a little bit going in, but didn't quite remember all of that part. The famous quote, "Our lives are but dreams rounded by a little sleep," that obviously comes from The Tempest. As always, reading this, I feel most for Caliban and Miranda. Ariel too, but more so Caliban and Miranda. I feel like we are distanced, intentionally distanced from Ariel in this play. It is interesting that by the end Ariel is freed and released while Caliban isn't, and in some ways Miranda isn't either, as she goes into her marriage with Ferdinand. There are themes of fiction and reality in this one as well, with Prospero and his magic closely tied to his art and his book. There were a couple places that I marked that really to me spoke to beauty and human goodness. The one place surprised me a little bit. This is in Act 2 when we have the motley crew bumbling around in their drunkenness. This is Gonzalo. Here is everything advantageous to life. Antonio responding, true, save means to live. Then Sebastian, of that there's none or little. And Gonzalo again, how lush and lusty the grass looks, how green. And that really reminded me of my favorite quote in The Brothers Karamazov, the one about the sticky leaves. I love this life, I love my own strong youth. Next quote I marked for that was Prospero. Hast thou which art but air, a touch, a feeling of their afflictions, and shall not myself, one of their kind, that relish all as sharply, passion as they, be kindlier moved than thou art. This is in Act 5, right at the very beginning of that. We have just gotten the scene where Prospero's realizing his own mortality. He's showing signs of his age, and we're now getting to the final act of the play where Prospero is going to renounce his art and drown his book. Looking at the notes in this, it really highlights the sensitivity to suffering and his humanness. And interestingly enough, it's also contrasted with Ariel, Prospero's. The dialogue in this section is between Prospero and Ariel. He is telling Ariel, you cannot feel the true depth of this human suffering because it is such a human thing and you are not human. The third quote I marked is Miranda. Prospero's peeled back the curtain. He's revealed Fernando and Miranda playing chess. This is one of my favorite parts in the whole play. Oh wonder, how many goodly creatures are there here? How beauteous mankind is, oh brave new world that has such people in it. This is especially powerful. Earlier in the play, we get Miranda telling us, I'm sorry if you can hear Ryan, he's cutting holes in the roof. It's fine. Earlier in the play, when Miranda meets Ferdinand, she says something along the lines of, you are so beauteous. She is so enamored and enthralled with him, but he's really only the third person that she's ever seen that she can remember. She got to the island when she was 3. She doesn't remember her own mother, and she has been raised by Prospero, and Caliban is also on the island. Interestingly enough, I don't think that she counts Caliban in her count. I think she says he's the second person that she's seen, and throughout the play, Caliban is this animalistic, fish-like, less than human being. I'm not focusing on that as much in this video because I've thought a lot about that and been interested in that in the past. Just wanting to look at some new things. All of a sudden, Miranda is presented with all of these people, this whole ship full of people, and the footnote actually said, interestingly enough, all these people are men. And it's so interesting that her first reaction is mankind is good, and she's so excited to see people. Then this is the famous part where Prospero drowns his book. It's right before the epilogue. No, it's a little bit before he drowns his book, but it's Prospero's quote, and it's about Caliban. This thing of darkness, I acknowledge mine. Looking at that quote outside the context of Caliban and more in the context of this idea of human good, this is sort of the last quote we get on that thought, and it's showing the darkness, the dark side of humanity and this subjugation throughout the play. Different people, various people are trapped, and there's this inherent goodness, but there's also this badness in people too. I very much enjoyed this reread. I read the first 2 acts a little bit in fits and spurts, and then yesterday I sat down and read acts 3 and 4 all together, and this morning I read act 5 all in one go. I think with Shakespeare, I do prefer to read in longer chunks, at least an entire act or 2. in full, that works out a little bit better for me because I can get in a groove. Whereas I was reading this a little bit before work and I wasn't enjoying it as much because I was only reading a couple pages here and there. I really do love the Oxford edition of the Shakespeare plays. Like I said, I have a couple of these. I also have the Norton. I do like how much more portable this is, but since I do prefer to read Shakespeare in longer chunks, longer settings, the Norton isn't that big of a deal. I will say with this longer introduction and the appendices were really good. This is the first read. I have looked at the appendices. The first time I read it, I just didn't really have time. Like I said, the Tempest always comes up at the end of the semester, so it was nice reading this not on a time crunch. The second time I read it in the Norton, which doesn't have the appendices, and it prints some of these letters and speeches and texts in full that Shakespeare is getting his source material from, which is really cool. The Oxford edition isn't necessary. I just think that they're really nice editions, but there are so many secondary sources, and the editors of this book were citing to so many of those, so there really are so many sources for Shakespeare that make it so accessible. I would recommend, if you're getting into Shakespeare, to find an edition that has some good glosses, even if it doesn't have, so Oxford, it's more academic and it's referencing secondary sources and primary sources, and where Shakespeare is getting his material, I would at the very least recommend something that glosses some of those old versions of the words and gives you their meaning and what they would have meant and what people would have understood at the time, because reading this as a modern reader, that can feel very inaccessible. Thank you so much for watching. I know the last couple of videos have gotten very long. I'm hoping this one's just a touch bit shorter. I really do appreciate you being here. If you made it all the way to the end and you're enjoying my watery literary journey, leave a wave emoji in the comments. And I will see you in the next one. Bye. Okay, this is the book I wanted to haul real quick. As you saw in an earlier clip, Ryan and I were doing some cleaning and we took some books to trade in at our local used bookstore. I'm pretty sure this was actually there the last time I went. I don't know, I don't remember. I also got my copy of Finnegan's Wake there, which was great. So I picked up the Joseph Campbell and Henry Morton Robinson Finnegan's Wake guide. So this is like a whole book annotation of Finnegan's Wake. Instead of footnotes and glosses, it's a whole book, and it really dives into all of the allusions, all of the meanings of this crazy text. Honestly, don't know if I'm gonna read Finnegan's Wake, how I'm gonna read Finnegan's Wake. I know that there are book clubs that spend years and years, decades reading Finnegan's Wake. I think one just wrapped up that spent 30 years. So I may end up just reading this entire book, but there's under the cover. I think this was actually written in the 40s, the Joseph Campbell book part of it, and then it has been refreshed by a Joyce professor. So if you want more Joyce and Wolf content, please stick around, because I will be getting into a lot of that.